All right. First off, let me answer the questions from yesterday from averages, and that way you've got those to check. And then we're going to go just a little bit further with averages. We're not going to spend a lot of time on this unit just because short one kind of gets you this little block here. But basically, I had you figure out some of the fractions and some of the numbers that we put up there to figure out the average. So let's do those first. Check and see if you got them right, and then we'll move into the next part of this. But first off, I had you find 3 out of 5. Okay, so 3 out of 5, you can write it as a fraction. You can turn it into a fraction so that you can see what you're doing. But remember, we talked about that 5 out of 5 would be 100%. If you divided 5 by 5, it'd be 100%. But we're going to take 3 out of 5, and so we're going to take 3 and divide it by 5. So in your calculator, you can hit in 3 divided by 5, and you get 0.6, okay? And so 0.6 is your percentage, and you say, wait, that's a decimal. Remember, we know how to turn that into a percent, so that means 60%. So if you had, like to use the dentist example again, if you had 3 out of 5 dentists recommend something, that means 60%, okay? And that, to me, when we see that, gives us more of an idea of what the percentages are, obviously, because it is a percent. Sometimes when we hear 3 out of 5, we think, oh, wow, that's really good, 3 out of 5. But when you look at 60%, you say, well, it's just a little bit above half. So, you know, that gives you an idea of how to turn those into percents and what knowledge you can gain from that, okay, and decisions that you can make. Later, if we get a chance to get some graphs and polls and things, you'll see how people can manipulate polls and graphs and make them kind of say what they want to say based on the questions that they ask or even how they put the material in. So it's always good to kind of run the numbers on everything to see, you know, what it means and what your percentages really are. Okay, then I had to do 5 out of 7. Okay, so number 2 was 5 out of 7, and it was as a fraction, 5 over 7, so same thing. We just take 5 divided by 7, and you get 70. Well, you get 0.71428. It keeps going. If we're doing a percentage, we move it twice. So it's 71%. It's 71.4. Well, if we're going to the nearest percent, because this is a 4 or lower, it stays 71%. If you had 71.4, that's fine. But, you know, if we're rounding to the nearest percent, it's going to be 71%, which I didn't specify. So, you know, as long as you got this and realize that, you know, it could be, you know, if you rounded, it's this. If you didn't, it's 71.4. But that is that percentage. And then I had you do one like a test score. Okay, so I had you do, or assignment score, I had you do one that was 17 over 20. So if we take 17 and divide it by 20, you get 85%. Okay. So it lets you know if you got a 17 out of 20 on an assignment, that's an 85%. Okay. And then I had some test scores here. So I had 75, 80, 80, 90, and 100. So these are already percents. So we're just adding them up. Okay, so let's do it this way. Let's see, 155, 233. Well, it's Monday, so that's what's going on in my brain. 155, 235, 325, 425. Okay, and let me check that because it is Monday. And just 370, nope, 160, 250, 350, 425. Okay, so 425 divided by, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 test scores. Okay, so you just divide now, and you get an 85% again. Okay, that is the average for that test score. Now, for these test scores, you can do little, like, find the middle if you're doing something like that, you know. That means this one came, like I look at it like this one came down 15, this one came down 5. So you came down a total of 20. And then you look, this one came up 10, this came up 5, this came up 5. So it went up 20. So that's where you know, if you came down 20, you went up 20, that's where you meet, right in the middle, something like that. I've done that before too when I'm trying to just figure out my test scores. But anyway, that's your average right there. Then I had you do another one. So I'm just going to push these into the calculator because now I don't trust my brain on a Monday morning. So 62 plus 87 plus 94 plus 98 plus 99 plus 100. So you got 540. It's number 5. You got 540, and you're going to divide it by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it should be 90. Yeah, 90. So now my brain works on a Monday, so who knows. 90% is the answer to number 5. Okay, so number 5 was 90, for those that are just watching. That was number 5 was a 90%. And then on number 6, I had you find the median. So, or not the median, I'm sorry, the mean of these. So 15, 12, 30, and 40, and 15. And if you notice too, these aren't listed in numerical order. That's going to come into play as we move on. But you just add them up still. So 27, 57, 97, 112. Okay. And you divide that by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so your mean should be okay, 22.4. Okay, so that is the mean. Now, this is taking it out of the realm of percentages. Let's just say you have, you know, you're just, I always use, I don't know what started this, but like if I was at a sports store selling canoes, and let's say I sold one day, I sold 15, the next day I sold 12, 30, so on. This day I was really good. Maybe I just was like, hey, these canoes are the best in the world, and people were like, they are the best in the world. And so they bought 40 that day and then 15. If I wanted to find out what my average was of selling a day, so that like going forward, if I was going to order canoes and say, how many do I need to really average for a day? It would be 22.4. Now, that doesn't mean I order a 0.4 of a canoe. There's no such thing. You know, you hear averages. People have an average of 2.3 children in the home. That does not mean they have a 0.3 child running around. That means that that's the average. And so with this being the average, I would have to order, if I wanted to cover the average and make sure I had, you know, more than that, I could order 23 canoes, okay? So that's what that means. But it gives you an average. Doesn't always come out even, but that just means that you would order one above that if you want to go above your average, okay? So I want to answer those. Hopefully that clears some of that out. Gives you some more look at it, more practice. Next thing I want to look at is like your grades at the school, and a lot of schools are this way, are called weighted averages, okay, weighted average. And that adds a little work to it, okay, a weighted average, I shorten the word average. And it's also called weighted grades. You may have a weighted grade somewhere. This adds a little bit to it because not only now is you have to find the average of your things, like, you know, what was my test scores and average them, what was my homework average them? Well, then you have to weight them, meaning your tests are worth more than your homework. So there's an extra layer that you have to do of math. And this is what really, professor, you know, when I was teaching, you look at it and you go, well, that's not, is that what their grade is? Because if you're doing it just as a straight average, you would think, well, something's off. Well, most likely it boils down to it being a weighted average. Now, at our school, just to use an example, 70% of your grade is your test, 30% of your grade is your homework. Okay, what that's meaning is whatever grade you get on your test, and let's say you, and I'm gonna make this first one really simple. Let's say you just scored 100% on every test. That'd be nice, right? Let's say you had 5 tests, you added them all up, you divided by 5, and you came out as 100. Okay, the reason why I would do this one really easy so you can see it happen really quick, and then we'll do one probably more accurate of what grades are. But let's say you, like I said, you did your average just like we did the day before, averages. You averaged up all your tests. You come out to 100%. And students a lot of times think, oh, okay, well, that's my grade. But it's not, because this is a weighted grade. So then let's say you checked your homework and you maybe missed an assignment there and maybe one you did kind of bad. But let's say you come out to 90% at your homework. Okay. and so your grade for your homework came out to 90%. Maybe you took all of your averages together, you divide by however many assignments there were, and you come up with 90%. Well, on a straight average, not a weighted average, if I took these two and added them together, got 190 and divided by 2. In fact, we did this one yesterday. If I took 190 and divided by 2, the middle ground is a 95. Most students think right away, well, then I got a 95 for the class. Well, that's not how a weighted average works. That would be if your test and your homework were weighted the exact same, meaning your tests were just the same weight as your homework. You know, it mattered just the same on what you got in your homework as your test. A lot of schools are not this way, meaning your tests are weighted more than your homework, meaning it's worth more than your homework. So this would be a straight average, meaning, okay, if I got 100 on my test and I got 90s on all my homework, then I got a 95 in the class. It's actually better news for you in this scenario that it is a weighted grade because you scored higher on your test and they're worth more than your homework. So in this case, when I taught high school like this, I always tried to tell them, hey, sometimes it works out in your favor that's weighted. A lot of times it doesn't though, because you know, you could have perfect homework and think, well, I'm going to do really well. It really, your tests drive your grade, and that's why it's set up that way. Schools want to make sure that you're knowing the knowledge as opposed to just doing homework. Even though this is very important, and I'll go through that here in a second, but this is just a straight average, so this isn't a weighted grade. So taking this same scenario and saying, well, how would I do a weighted average then? Well, this is what plays into it. If you got 100 on your test, on all your tests, and you averaged them out, and you got 100, and you got 90 on all your homework, what you need to do next then is find out, well, what's my weighted average? Well, how you do that is you've got to turn this into a decimal. We know how to do that. We move the decimal twice, and we get 0.7. That means I'm going to take my test grade and multiply it times 0.7. What comes out is 70. Okay, so you get 70 as that answer. Well, that means, and let's look at it like this. Let's say I scored 100% on all my tests, but did not do a single thing of homework. Got a 0% on my homework. That means my grade for the class is going to be a 70. Okay, if you think about 100 and 0, you think, well, I should have got a 50. That's the average. Well, no, not when it's weighted like this. If all I did was got 100% on my test and it's 70% of my grade, that means my class grade is a 70. Now, students in high school love this because they would go, oh, I'm going to ace all my testing and not have to do any homework and get a 70. And that's where I would explain to them, well, for one, that's you know, you're putting a lot of pressure on yourself to get 100% on your test. And I would tell them, look, you could try that, but let me warn you, now some heeded the warning, some didn't. It's going to be very hard to get 100% on any test if you're not doing any of the homework. And so it does matter. Plus, too, I'm like, you are settling for this is the highest you can get. Okay, so I would explain it that way. But, and it's true, you know, this is the highest then you can get if you do no homework whatsoever. But we did in this scenario. We did 90%. We got 90% on our homework. And so what that means is I've got to multiply. So right now we're sitting at a 70. But now to figure out what is added to it for my homework, I'm going to take this 30% and turn it to a decimal, which is 0.3. And I'm going to multiply 90 times 0.3, which that comes out to 27. Okay? Okay, because what happens is, let me do that in slow motion. 3 times, not that slow motion, I'm sorry, I had to throw that in. 3 times 0, 3 times 9 is 27, and then move the decimal once, it's 27. So 27 is what I get to add to my grade from my homework. So I was at a 70, and I add a 27, which means my grade is a 97% in this scenario. Now remember what I said before, you would have had a 95 had the homework and the test been the same weight. So it actually works out in your favor because you did better on your test than your homework, and so your grade actually goes up from a 95 because this is worth more. Let's do one more, like a little bit harder, same weight though, but a little bit harder grade to figure out. So let's say I got a 75% on all my tests. Maybe I did really bad on one of them, and I got a 75%. I'm actually not going to rewrite that because this is the test side. So let's say I averaged all my, maybe I got a 90 on one, a 70 on one, an 80, you know, and I averaged them all together and I came out to a 75%. And then let's say, but I was very good. I did all my homework. You know, I made sure I turned this in, and I got 100% on all my homework, and you know, I did every problem, I corrected them, you know, got that. In this case, okay, it's not going to be the average between these two, the straight average. You're still going to have to do the weight thing, so you still have to multiply times 0.7 and times 0.3. And in this case, in this scenario, your grade's actually going to be a little bit lower than the halfway point. The halfway point, just so we can keep a reference, the halfway point would be adding 100 plus 75 and then dividing that by 2. So the halfway point would be an 87.5. That is going to be if they were worth the same thing, but they're not. So let's do our weighted average and see that we're actually going to be a little bit below that because you scored lower on the test, which is worth more than on the homework. But let's find out what it is exactly. It's not going to be drastically lower, but it will be lower. So we're going to take 0.75 and multiply, or 75% or 75, and multiply it times 0.7. Okay, 70%. So 75 times 0.7 comes out to 52.5. So in this scenario, if we had scored this on our test and did no homework, we would fail. Okay, we'd be at a 52.5. But then let's add in what you get for your homework. So we're going to take 100 times 0.3, and that comes out to 30. Okay, and if I multiply that, it comes out to 30. And so I'm going to add that to the 52.5, and I get an 82.5. Okay, so that's my score. That's my percentage in this weighted average. It was 5% lower than the straight average. And because of that, is because I scored lower on my test, which was worth more. Not drastically lower, but a little bit lower. So if you're trying to apply this and figure out your grades, and I'm not going to have you do a lot of these for our test, just because a lot of times, well, we have Synergy, which does this work for us. There's things in life that I feel like, you know, yes, things do it for you, but if you learn about them and know how they work and can do them on your own in a way, it really helps you make decisions and you know, and have something where it's not just being told to you. That's what education is about. I'll give my little education speech. It's so that you know things that you didn't know. There's going to be some classes that you take that you think, well, why am I ever going to use this? Well, you may not in your job. You may not, you know, but it's education. It's things that you didn't know that now you know. And so it helps you make more informed decisions, helps you, you know, have that confidence to know that material. So this here, you could try it on your grade, check and see. But what you would do to do this is, because this is the weight of your grade, is you can take all your test scores, okay, add them up, find the straight average of them. So like I said, let's say you end up with an 80 or a 90 or 100, whatever your test score is. Then do that with your homework. Homework's a little bit different because I would imagine most of your homework, you've got them written as like 8 out of 10 and stuff. So you're going to have to go through, find the averages, add them up. Or you could take all the total points, you know, if it's like an 8 out of 10, and a 9 out of 10, and then a 7 out of 10, you could add the tops and get, so 24 out of 30, okay, and then find your score. That's going to be an 80% as well. And so you could do that, and let's say you scored 90 on all your homework or something, and then go through the thing of multiplying it times 0.7 and multiplying this times 0.3, okay? So that gives you an idea how to do that for your weighted grade. Couple last things here, and because I put these together because they're usually taught together, mean, median, and mode. Okay, so we're kind of switching gears just a little bit. This is, to me, it's going to be a lot easier than that weighted grade things. There's going to be more material on this as far as on your assignment. But here's mean, median, and mode. Mean, we've already talked about. That's the average. Okay, so that when you see that, it means the average. You add them up and divide by however many. Median is a little bit different, and mode is different as well. And obviously, the hardest thing is going to be remembering which one's which. But there's ways I tell myself to remember, and I'll give you those once we go through it. Mean is average. Median's going to be the middle number. And I remember middle because the median runs down the middle of a road. Just a side note, when I was in California last summer, yeah, Beverly Hills, we drove down Beverly Hills and was driving. The medians were just beautiful. Like, they had flowers that I'd never seen before, and it was like I was more distracted by the medians than anything else. But that's usually, median runs down the middle, so that's how I remember middle. And then mode is going to be the one that occurs the most, and I remember that because mode almost sounds like most. Okay, and remember I said yesterday, mean being average, it's the meanest, it's the hardest, it's the, to figure out the average of something. So that's how I remember the differences. But median means you have to find the middle number. So let's say I have a list of numbers, 12, 30, 17, 20, 25, and 20 again, and 27. Let me make sure I've got, let's see, 1, 2, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, there's going to be a middle number. So here's a list of numbers, and if I wanted to find the mean, I'd add them up and divide by 7. There's 7 numbers, and that's how I find the mean. We've already done that. Median, they have to be in numerical order to find the median, and they're not right now. They're kind of, they're all, this is the highest number, and it's way down here. So first thing you have to do is put them in numerical order. So 12, 17, and then the two 20s. You got to list both of them. And then 25, and then 27, and then 30. So you got to switch them to numerical order. Once you do that, okay, once you have that done, you don't have to add them up or anything, so this is where it becomes pretty easy. You find the middle number, the one that's right in the middle. And because this is an odd set of numbers, you have a middle number. So I do it like this. If I go one in, I take this one off. I'm working my way towards the middle. Do it here, do it here, do it here, do it here, and I'm right in the middle. That's the middle. There's 3 numbers to this side, 3 numbers to this side. This is your middle number, which means it's the median, okay? So it's just a matter of putting them in numerical order, then finding the middle number. Let's do one more of those. Okay. Now, there's a lot of numbers. You see the mean would be, you have to add them all up. So that's quite a bit of work. But we're finding the median, and so let's put these in numerical, smallest number being 3, and then 12, and then 13. And I cross them out. That way I know I got every number. Because sometimes when you see a list of numbers like that, you leave one out or something. 20. And then 25, and then 100. And just to make sure, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 numbers. Okay. Now, I'm going to work my way towards the middle number. Okay. And the middle number is 16. It doesn't matter, repeated. I'm still going to the middle number. The median of this problem is 16. Okay. All right, so that's median. Now, what happens when there is no middle number? So I'm going to put a shorter example up there, and I'll go ahead and put them in numerical so we don't have to do that. 12, 16, 18, and 30. Okay, now, these are in numerical. I want to find the median, but if I work my way in, there's no middle number. It's an even number of numbers. What you have to do when that happens, there's still a median, but what you have to do is, okay, it's not these two. These are the outliers there. I'm working my way in. It's between these two. It should be right in here. Well, if there is no median, if there's no middle number, you have to take the average of the 2 middle numbers. So I have to go through and find the mean of this. Adds a little work to it, but I have to find the average between these 2 numbers, which means I add them up, 18 plus 16, okay? And I divide by however many numbers. It's always going to be 2. And it's 17. Now, if you already know that 17 is right in the middle between 16 and 18, you can do that in your head. But 17 then would be the median. Even though it's not written up there, it's the average of the 2 numbers, okay? Let's do another one of those, okay? 8, 10, 10, and 14. Okay, it's not the two outside numbers. It's the average of these two. Well, if they're the same number, the average is going to be the same as the number. Because if you add these two, get 20 divided by 2, it's going to be the same number. It's going to be the 10 again. So 10 is your median in this case. Okay, one more of those, because you can, this is one answer on these examples that you could have 0.5, because here is another one with no middle number. I work my way in, okay, and I'm stuck between 8 and 9. There's no number, right? There's no like whole number in between these two. But if I add them up, 17 and divide by 2, I get 8.5. That is, you're either going to end up with a whole number as a median, like the one we did on the first one, or you're going to end up with 0.5 right in between them. So this is 8.5 if they're all whole numbers. Obviously that changes if they're decimals, but 8.5 is the median of this one. Okay, last thing is mode. Okay, mode is the one that's the most. This is very, very easy to do. There's no really math involved. It's just visually looking. So here's a list of numbers. If we were doing mean, we'd add them up, divide them. If we're doing median, we put them in numerical, find the middle. Mode, we're just seeing which one repeats the most. Okay, in this case, there's 2 5s, so the mode is 5. Okay, you just, no math, you're just seeing which one's the most. So if there's 2 and there's only one of everything else, there's 5. Let me give you another example. Okay, 12, 17, 17, 20, 12, 20, 12, and 14. Okay, I look through and there's 1, 2, 3 12s, there's 2 17s, there's 2 20s. Well, there's 2 of these, there's 2 of these, but there's 3 of the 12s, so the one that repeats the most is 12. 12 is my mode. As soon as one distinguishes itself and is more than the others, then that's your mode. A couple things that can happen with mode. Now those of you are straightforward, hey, this one's the most, is you could have more than one mode. You say, well, I thought there had to be a most. Well, if you have 2 of them that repeat twice, but none of them, there's not a third one. Okay, so I have 2 8s, I have 2 9s, then I have 2 modes, 8 and 9. Okay, because they're more than the 7 and 10, but they're the same as each other. So I have 2 modes, one of them being 8, one of them being 9. You can have 3 modes. If there had been another 10, then I'd have a third mode, because they all repeat more than 7, but yet they all repeat twice. Now, as soon as one of them becomes a third one, then I only have 1 mode, and that's 8 in this case. As soon as there's a third one that's more than the others, then that's the mode. The last thing about mode is you could have no mode. Okay, so let's say I have 30, 7, 8, 15, and 20. Okay, 30, even though it's really high, there's no other number that repeats. If there's no number that repeats, then there's no mode. You could have no mode. Okay, you would just put no mode. So that's the thing about mode. So it's easy to do once you get the hang of it and kind of know which one it is, because there's no math involved. It's just identifying it. What I want you to do, because this video is kind of long and there was a lot of notes, I'm going to have you just take a photo of your notes. Make sure you take notes. If you need to go back and do that now, I want you to write some of this down so that you can have a reference point that you can use as you try these and move on. And just take a photo of your notes, upload it on the class. There will be an assignment, though, that we'll post with this, and you just need to take a photo of your notes and upload it. Okay, so that'd be your assignment for this assignment. Make sure, guys, you're also turning them in time by the due date that night. 11:59 is when it shuts off, because I have to have it in to be able to count you that attendance for that day. Okay, just a reminder of that. Thanks, guys.